Hey guys, and welcome to the WRST Podcast. I am Orlundo Hubbard, dev at WRST Collabs, and today we're going to be talking to Rahat. He's a developer relations engineer at Polygon, and we actually just used the Polygon network for a client project, and we just had a few questions about how things played out, and we wanted to just chat with Rahat and see if there were some things he could shine some light on and kind of help us go through. But I'll let Brendan kick it off. Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working with Round 21 for a little bit, and this is kind of a little bit of a breakdown of our experience with the airdrop working on Polygon, and want to get your feedback on that. And I guess we can get into more of the specifics later. But Rahat, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and giving us a little bit of background about who you are, where you stand, what you're into?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Rahat. I'm the lead developer relations engineer over at Polygon. So DevRel at Polygon is a pretty large organization. What my team kind of specifically does is we go around to like different conferences, hackathons, deliver technical talks, do like mentoring for developers who are like in hackathons trying to like build out like maybe their first MVP or anything like that. And generally like trying to like make the developer experience a little bit better for folks who are building on Polygon, taking feedback, working with like product teams to figure out where we can improve, things like that. That's kind of like in a nutshell what I do. Lots of traveling, lots of this type of thing, going on podcasts, doing talks here and there. So been real fun doing that for the past few months.
Nice. What is your background? Originally, like schooling, did you study computer science, or get into it later?
Yeah. I was an engineer for about 3.5 years before moving into DevRel, mainly in the front end space. I actually like switched careers. So I used to be in customer support side of things. I was managing and leading customer support groups in different startups in New York City. And eventually just like I was interacting a lot with like engineers in general, and kind of wanted to see like what was like the other side of things. Like how do I, instead of being the one to like deliver good or bad news, trying to like figure out how I can become the person who
create the bad news.
Create the bad news.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
So I went to like a coding bootcamp, did that for a few months, and then switched careers over, became a dev.
So what brought you, because I know we all have like our Web3 origin stories and stuff like that. What actually brought you to Web3, and like you knew like, okay, this is the industry that I wanted to be in?
Yeah, I initially was dabbling with like back in like 2016, 2017, dabbling with all the ICO stuff, but not really focused on the technical side as of yet at that time. I think it was more January of last year where I decided to like learn a little bit more on the technical side, decided to like dive into Solidity a little bit and see just like what I can do. And that was more just like a curious phase at that point.
Right.
And then I started seeing like all these like NFT drops and things like that. And it just like made me wonder, like I was wondering at that point, like how can we apply this to like musicians? I'm a former musician. So, I was just always wondering, like, would this have been a way for people like me to like maybe stick to being a musician rather than, having to get a real day job? It was just like that curiosity kind of like piqued my interest a little more, started diving into things a little bit further, and got my first job in Web3 working at a company called Rabbit Hole. Was there for a few months, and I had already wanted to move into DevRel for quite a while at that point. So it was kind of like seeing this new space, seeing Web3, and just kind of decided like this is just the moment to like dive in. That's what I did.
Yeah, and just even to touch on that, like wanting to move in like DevRel, like I remember you. So for context, me and Rahat kind of go back like Genesis Web3 friends. Like I've been knowing him at least since I hopped into Web3. He actually gave me my first opportunity of like just actually doing some dev work in Web3. So shout out to you for that, for sure. I remember being back in East Denver and you just talking about like how you really were pursuing like DevRel, and then like I remember just the talks and things like that, and you like it happened, and I was like, whoa. And it was just like shooting star mode from there. And it was so it's been super cool to like see you grow and continue to watch you grow. But yeah, so I kind of wanted to, I guess, pivot a little bit. And I'll pitch it over to Brendan. If you can kind of just explain like the project that we just recently worked on, what happened, and you know, the things that we kind of, because Brendan kind of was like he was like the forerunner on it. So he was dealing with all of the like the issues with MetaMask and the problems that he, you know, with airdrop and the how many we had to airdrop and things like that. So if you want to just first, I guess, start off explaining the project and then kind of going, I guess, like top down from there.
Yeah. So we had a client who wanted to do a 10K drop of animation assets, like 3D models of these balls that you can like turn around. They turned out super cool. GLB files. So, you know, there's image URL, animation URL, and the metadata. Yeah, so all of the metadata construction, everything went fine. And then basically, since it's a 10K collection, we ended up running into issues because I've done 1K, 2K, 5K collections where I didn't have any issues really. And then you run into a 10K one. It's like, wow, okay. All these like, you know, scaling node scripts and stuff like that don't really scale. So the main sort of issue, at least, well, they didn't want to do this on Ethereum. They already had assets on Ethereum. They wanted to use Polygon specifically for gas, right? And we were sort of the mind that the transactions would go a little bit faster. It turns out that during the drop, when we were looking at the live feed, there was anywhere between like 7,000 and 10,000 pending transactions in queue at that time. And we went back and we actually looked back at the data, and we couldn't find a spike in the Polygon scan graphs or anything like that.
We were checking things like utilization and stuff like that just to see what on that day, how much utilization the network had, things like that. And it didn't look like it was like crazy or anything like that.
So
right?
Yeah, I feel like there was some sort of disconnect we couldn't really figure out after looking at it later. We're like, why did we see it like 8,000 that day? We see, 200 in the backlogs. So I guess, one of the first questions that I had, I was kind of surprised that Polygon is limited at around 40, 45 TPS, something like that, 40 to 50. Has that been sort of the case since initial launch of Polygon? Or has that, varied in any kind of way with ongoing developments in the Polygon ecosystem?
And before we even get into I want to, for context, for people who may not even know what Polygon is, because we don't know, we may have people who are watching that are super new to Web3. Can you just give a quick overview of what Polygon is, what Polygon does, how it's helping the Web3 ecosystem?
Yeah, definitely. Before we dive into that, Polygon is so we're building like different Ethereum scaling solutions. So wanting people to build on top of the EVM, build on top of Ethereum, and do it like in a little bit more accessible way. So that comes with like lower gas fees, higher TPS, and overall just like providing different types of solutions for different problems. So in the case that you guys are talking about now, you guys are probably using our proof of stake blockchain, which is pretty much the premier product that we've had. So it's where most people are familiar with Polygon and how we operate. There's like other solutions as well. We have different enterprise solutions. with like our Polygon.H that kind of allows you to like build your own kind of like private blockchain a little bit that's EVM compatible, as well as like other things coming out soon with like more traditional like true layer 2 scaling solutions. So a few things definitely in the works there. Specifically for this this drop, I just kind of based on what you guys are saying, I'd probably have to look at it a little bit deeper just to like fully understand what was going on.
Yeah, and feel free to ask like any clarifying questions, like questions that you may have for us that we could help you better understand the situation a little bit more.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall, like you were like the issues didn't really come up until like everyone was like trying to mint, right? And you just had like a whole bunch of pending transactions.
Yeah, it was an airdrop. So, there's a mint function inside of the airdrop function that mints the asset and then kind of sends it out. Yeah.
So was it like essentially minting and sending, like, is it one transaction that's like minting and then sending to everyone, or like multiple transactions, like minting, send to a person, mint, send to a person, something like that?
It goes by an allow list. So, or by like you put an input array in, right, of the addresses that you want to airdrop to, and it mints to that address. Okay. So it's one smart contract call, and I think it's just one transaction.
Gotcha. So one transaction minting 10K assets.
Right.
Pretty much.
Right.
Gotcha. That's wow. That's
is that normal? Like, is it like something that, like, what would you say would probably be a better way to have done it, or could it have been optimized a little bit more? What's your thoughts?
It's interesting that you guys essentially just minted everything in one go and sent it out. Would it have been, what was like the reasoning behind that more to like save gas for people and like have them kind of just receive this thing, or like what was?
Yeah, I think it was just a simplification of the process, because we could just come in and basically give an array of addresses, and then it would mint straight through and provide, the assets to everybody. I mean, when you hear of people doing these sort of larger drops, number one, what sort of time, like how often does something like that happen where somebody's doing like more than a 5K drop on Polygon? Is that pretty typical day to day, or is that like once a week or once every couple of weeks?
Yeah, I don't actually have insights specifically on some of that side of things. Something I'd have to grab a little bit more analytics for to honestly be able to tell you. But I'd say like there's it was I wonder if it's really just like minting 10,000 assets and sending them out to people that just maybe took a little bit of time. If it's all being done in like one single transaction call.
Yeah, we ended up breaking it up because the gas fees would have been enormous otherwise, right? So we did it in pieces of about 200 at a time, and we would let sort of the queue fall down over the course of like 5 minutes or something like that, and then we'd do another one and do another one, do another one. But the problem with that is, at the time we didn't have a node script that would set the wait and wait for a number of certain block confirmations, which we've since done. So we were doing it manually. It's just like me sitting in front of a computer with Cheetos, for like 6 hours, just pressing go, I was, I guess I was curious if, of people doing it in an alternative way, or if they have a different setup in their smart contract to deal with that, or if they mint the assets ahead of time and they send them separately as a different transaction, or have you heard of sort of an optimized way to do that?
I feel like at least my approach, or just like what I've seen kind of like works pretty well, is like really letting the user mint their own.
Yeah.
And if you want to like go further and like saving gas, that could be done with like doing like gasless meta transactions of like using some type of relayer in the background, so that someone can go in and actually just like sign the transaction and get the NFT minted for them, but not have to actually pay any gas.
Right.
So similar to like what Lens Protocol does. And for me, I feel like that is probably, at least in my mind, the better approach. It puts like the effort kind of probably on the user, and you probably have the extra overhead of like having some type of minting site, or maybe you did. I don't know exactly that side of things, but that I feel like kind of, it's just one really quick transaction kind of going through. There's not a lot going on there. Perhaps that might have been just easier, like to make sure all the transactions kind of go through quickly. But yeah, that is like, just I'm trying to like kind of like think about how that's a pretty heavy, I guess, like heavy task to put into one transaction.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
So the best way probably would be to just basically let the user go and actually mint their own and do it in like a gasless transaction type way.
Yeah, because I feel like at least from the experience point, I feel like that's also like just part of the experience. Like you want to go and like, grab this collectible or whatever for yourself, right? It adds that experience level into it, and like then you can kind of like, if there are issues, you can hone it down to like single transactions and figure out like what went wrong in those specific instances. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, have you seen pretty large transaction queues when looking at the network, in terms of like the thousands and thousands? I know we look back at the analytics, and the line was pretty flat, right? Of like pending transactions across the network for several months, right? And utilization was only at like 50%, even that day. Do you have any experience seeing like lots of transactions pile up and the utilization get a little bit higher? Or I guess, do we just pick a bad day and everybody was like out there like getting it on Polygon? Or I guess, could you give us a little bit of insight into the analytics of, utilization of Polygon and sort of how that leads into future state of some of the stuff that you guys are building?
Yeah, I mean, like one thing I kind of like mentioned in the beginning is like this is kind of like our premier kind of, solution. The architecture behind this solution is like, we have like at the bottom, like the Matic side chain. Then there's like a contract that lives on the Ethereum mainnet, and like what connects it all together are just like Plasma nodes that essentially just do a checkpoint save on like the current state of the Polygon, like the state of the data on Polygon, and a hashed value of that is saved onto this contract on Ethereum. So overall, it's a commit chain, kind of like powered by Plasma nodes. Now, of course, like this is a great initial solution. It was good for a lot of dApps. It was good for I feel like a lot of the basic scaling needs that a lot of people had. But of course, like as you get into like heavier loads, like kind of like what you guys were just doing, you need more power. So that's like a lot of like why we're working on the different solutions that we are putting out. So we recently announced the ZK EVM solution, which is essentially just you being able to write your Solidity smart contracts and deploy it on a L2 solution that is powered by zero knowledge technology. So it doesn't use zero knowledge for like privacy reasons, but it's more for scaling purposes. So you probably have a better experience with something this heavy on something like that. We are hopefully announcing a testnet very, very soon.
Right. Yeah.
But I can't say much more.
Okay.
And yeah, that's and like that is why like it's it's like experiences like this like why we're like investing so much in creating these additional tools and additional ways of scaling, because really any blockchain kind of alone, like even if it's like a scaling solution like a sidechain or an L2, it's going to eventually run into a point where it just needs more juice, right? Just needs more power. So that's why we're kind of investing in like the ZK side of things, not only for privacy but also for scaling. So like that, it's these instances that really make us like see that like there's no one tool at any point that's going to be successful for every single use case. And yeah, that's like kind of the onus for going into some of the other scaling solutions we have, especially on the ZK side. So definitely think, once we have more of our tools out there, you probably have like maybe a tool that might be better suited for a project like this.
I'm glad you actually brought up the ZK EVM, because that's something that I definitely wanted to chat with you about, because it's something I'm super excited about. ZK rollups in general, I'm just like super excited about them, because like just the fact that you can make these interactions on the internet without having to give over your privacy, I think it's going to be super, super. If I can think of like the one thing in Web3 that just like really like gets my eyes big, I guess, in a sense, it's that. So if you could talk about, because you said something, you said it's not necessarily for privacy, but it's more so for scaling. Why not have it for both? What stops it for being from both? And then on the scale side, could you talk about the impact that it will actually have on the scale side?
Yeah. As a part of that, isn't ZK EVM significantly more computationally intensive than traditionally
that's a
EVM?
Point,
and sorry, we asked you like 5 questions in a row. Pick your choice, pick your adventure.
Yeah. I mean, I can dive into the ZK EVM kind of stuff. Essentially, if you look at the concept of like a rollup, it's going to take a bunch of transactions, might execute them like off chain or whatever. And the way like the ZK in it, like at a very, very high level, and then I'll kind of like talk about a little bit of like the deeper parts of it. Essentially what's happening is like these transactions can all be executed off chain, and a proof can be generated saying that, okay, these transactions happened, they happened correctly, this is the end result of them, and now we can batch all these transactions together onto Ethereum, right? So the way that this works specifically with ZK EVM is there's two kind of moving parts. There's a sequencer, and I wasn't prepared for this one.
You don't have to go too far into the details.
Yeah, you don't have to go too far into the weeds with it.
Yeah.
Essentially, there's like a sequencer that goes through and like, takes all the transactions, matches them together into one. And then on the execution side, that's all run through some specific like software and hardware that we have, goes through, executes the transactions. A ZK proof, like a snark, is actually generated, showing that these were all, executed, done. This is what the state of the blockchain will become because of these transactions. That proof and state is then moved back over to Ethereum mainnet.
So you have the transaction network, and then you have the computation network, right?
Right.
So for the computation network, is that run by Polygon, or is that decentralized in any kind of way?
Yeah, that would be decentralized. Like you can run like your like again, sorry, I wasn't prepared to go this deep into it, but there are like you can run kind of like a validator type of deal kind of exists on this side where like you can have what the sequencer does is like they will put up the transactions and pay some amount of matic along with that. Kind of similar to gas fees, and then whoever on the execution side can go in and first create and generate that proof will like earn that matic, so that like the incentivization to like be on the validation side of that type of thing. So it still like works pretty similarly to like a proof of stake chain where you have your validators kind of like going through. Right. But in this case, you have like this off-chain sort of like hardware that allows you to go through, batch these transactions, and then save the state of them back to Ethereum.
Yeah, so the million Dogecoin question is, what kind of TPS are we looking at, or have you guys set a goal for TPS moving to ZK EVM? I guess how's that going to shake out?
Yeah, that unfortunately is something I can't really share at the moment.
Yeah,
it's coming soon. Yeah,
it's coming. It's very, very alpha.
Yeah.
Right.
Dang it, Rahat! I was looking to get all the alpha from you today. Like,
we like during the testnet release, which we hope will be coming out like probably sooner than you think when people say soon on like a podcast or some type of thing.
Yeah.
So very, very, very soon. You will be able to like test things out on like a test net, and what we're hoping for is really just to like understand from there like how people are using it. Our team is hoping to go in and be able to like say, okay, these are the improvements we need for mainnet, etc. So we're still in the experimental phase, as most things are in this industry.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, we'll be able to probably share those like numbers a little bit more post testnet.
And once testnet goes live, we'll be on there looking at transaction volumes and stuff and figuring it out ourselves, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, if everything's rolled up too, it's going to be a little bit more amorphous. So because you're just getting the hashes that are coming through in the transactions as opposed to everything. Yeah. Do you have a favorite? Kind of switching gears, do you have a favorite library for development, like Ethers, Web3, WAGMI, something else?
Yeah, I mean, I come from a front end background. I really love WAGMI hooks. Probably, in my opinion, one of the best open source tools in the Web3 space.
Yeah.
I learned using Ethers.js, Web3.js, and all that, and then when WAGMI kind of came in, I was just like, holy crap, this is
just made it so
making my life so much easier.
Yeah, dude.
Because I think it's like built around React Query. So I was already using React Query in a lot of things anyway. So I was trying to like sometimes figure out how to use like create some like reusable hooks. Yeah. And then WAGMI came in. They're like, hey, we did the work for you.
Yeah.
So.
It's like, it was like Struggle Town, like before WAGMI, and like, even like, just the investment with like Rainbow, where it's just kind of plug and play. Rainbow Kit like makes it even more easier. So
with deep links.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to them, to WAGMI and just that whole library for sure.
Yeah, really appreciate them, but also, if you guys are listening, stop introducing breaking changes constantly. I'm like always rewriting my code. So love you, but that's a little frustrating sometimes. But I guess Orlundo, did you have any other things you want to get into?
Well, I know we wanted to just kind of, I guess, touch on just like the comparison between some other L2s like Arbitrum, Optimism, how they differ from Polygon, and what makes Polygon stand out, things like that. If you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, there's plenty of L2s to kind of like choose from at this point. I would say, specifically on Polygon, and it's one of the reasons I actually joined the team in the first place, has been like the fact that it's really the investments in like a lot of this other technology, right? That have been developed and been using. Like I got to like very recently like learn a lot from some of the ZK teams, some of the teams that are working on all the like the different solutions that are kind of coming out, and like really seeing just like what Polygon has enabled them to do. Like giving you an example from the ZK VM side, like all of that code is actually open source, so you can dive into it and like see how all of it is like pretty much built. Like the team there, like they pretty much like created like to get the whole like the EVM matching thing, like to be able to use a ZK rollup and still write Solidity code, like that was apparently not, possible for quite some time. And like I've seen it work, Nice. Like it's there, like it's they pretty much invented like a brand new coding language under the hood to like make sure all of the opcodes and everything are mapped out. Like the amount of work and like the technical kind of like push that like a lot of these teams have was just like, when I got to like really sit down and go through and understand it, it was like phenomenal, right? And I'm not saying that there's not like really highly technical folks on like other solutions, of course there are, but just like really seeing this and like I was like doing a deep dive myself just like into like Ethereum opcodes and everything like that, and as the more like I learned, the more I understood about it, the more just like my mind was blown by like what these folks were kind of like capable of doing.
Right.
I think even like a few folks from Solana were just like, yo, this is like crazy when they like did it, dive into some of the code. Like some of the different like things that like these guys pulled off was just phenomenal. And like going back to like one of the reasons why I even joined Polygon in the first place was because like I saw like how some people kind of view it as like, oh, you're just acquiring all these different like groups and like whatever that argument that's being made, but like it's more like acqui-hiring, right? Like we acquire, but like it's not like we're like getting rid of any of them,
right?
We're just like enabling them to like further deep dive into the tech and like helping them to like continue build. And like honestly, I've seen now like how much that has been helpful to a lot of these teams who are now just like part of our team, who are just like, we're all kind of like building this stuff together. And it's really cool just to like see how Polygon has been enabling people to like really kind of like not have to focus so much more on like, oh, do we have enough money to raise to like keep building this tech, but just like here, just focus on the tech,
right?
Build like amazing solutions. And that's been my favorite part, really.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. And I guess that's a kind of a good note to just even end on. I guess like the last question that I had was just like, what can we actually, I know you can't give away too much, but what should we be expecting from Polygon like in the near future?
I mean, if you've seen any of my tweets there, I did retweet a MetaMask screenshot of a connection to ZKVM.
Oh, so, wow. Okay.
That has been there.
Yeah, for sure.
That is out in the public.
Nice. Okay. I'm actually gonna go ahead.
When I say soon, I mean soon.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah. Brendan, do you have anything else for Rahat?
No, thanks Rahat for coming on and talking with us. Really appreciate your insight and doing some dev on dev action here. And yeah, thanks again, man.